The early days of arcade gaming dealt a lot with concepts. Hit this ball, shoot this spaceship, break these bricks. All fun activities to enjoy, all with a goal in mind. But it can be argued that none have a motivation. Motivations typically are derived from characters and their individual goals, dreams, and aspirations. And while Pac-Man's main character goal may be to guzzle some balls, pellets, he was a pioneer of this concept. Pac-Man was one of the very first video game characters and definitely the first to hit such an iconic status.
More than Space Invaders, more than asteroids. When it comes to video games, Pac-Man is king.
Oh! Welcome, class, to VG 101. I'm your host, the VG Professor. Pac-Man is undoubtedly one of the greatest video games of all time. Pac-Man as a character is probably one of the most iconic video game characters of all time. However, Pac-Man has ups, downs, lefts, and rights, and today we're offering you a crash course in Pac-Man's illustrious history. So grab some quarters, eat some fruit, and get ready to catch some ghosts. In 1974, Namco acquired Japan's division of Atari and started to produce their own games. The Japanese market was oversaturated with shooters due to the intense popularity of Space Invaders. This led Namco developer Toru Iwatani to want to create a game that was for the most part non-violent, as well as appealing to women, in order to break this trend. Thus, Pac-Man was born.
Hey, you know Pac-Man?
I know of him.
Well, Pac-Man was originally called Puck-Man. They changed it because not because Pac-Man looks like a hockey puck. Paku means flap your mouth. And that they were worried people would scratch out the P, turn it into an F, like.
Yeah, that's amazing.
The 1980 release of Pac-Man changed not only the arcade landscape in Japan, but worldwide. Pac-Man Fever was the real deal. But how does it stack up today? Well, thanks to Arcade 1-Up, the recent release of Pac-Man Museum Plus, and any of the versions of Namco Museum, you can play Pac-Man as much as you want right in your own home. Let's see how it plays. The main goal of Pac-Man is to eat all the dots on the screen without getting touched by the ghosts. Each ghost has their own distinct personality that makes them pursue Pac-Man in a different way. The AI is smart enough to consistently adapt based on the position and direction that Pac-Man is going in relation to the position and direction of the ghosts. There are a few suggested routes you can take to maximize score, rounds, etc. Fucking ghosts! Truly a survival horror game worthy of its merits. Resident Evil is quaking in its boots. The large dots are called power pellets, and when you eat one, ghosts will turn blue and Pac-Man is able to eat them for bonus points. When you eat all the dots in the maze, the round ends and the maze resets. Finish enough rounds and you'll even see some of the earliest video game cutscenes. Each maze has a bonus fruit, or object, such as bells and keys, that Pac-Man is able to eat for more points. As you progress through more and more rounds, the bonus items give more points. And the power pellets will typically be less effective time-wise. Get the pellet, get the pellet, get the pellet! What? Why isn't it doing anything? Once you get to stage 17, the power pellet will no longer work. It returns to normal in stage 18, but when you hit 19, it never works again. Power pellet, more like poo-poo pellet. Sorry, class, that was inappropriate. The game eventually ends when the player runs out of lives, but you can beat the game by getting to the kill screen on stage 256. A kill screen is a term for when an arcade game is no longer playable because of how it is programmed. In Pac-Man's case, it causes game code to appear and make half the screen unplayable. Pac-Man definitely holds up. Fun concept, great execution, timeless game. You know, they should really make a series of Pac-Man games. Whoa, wait. How many Pac-Man games are there? After Pac-Man's reception in 1980, many others tried to replicate that success. I could talk about the Pac-Man clones that existed, but I'd rather talk about how the arcade market started to get oversaturated with actual Pac-Man sequels. Miss Pac-Man, Pac-Man Plus, Mr. and Miss Pac-Man, Baby Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man, Pac-and-Pal, Professor Pac-Man, Junior Pac-Man, Pac-Land! Within 2 years, there were 9 fucking Pac-Man sequels in the arcades! And that's not all. In the late 80s onward, they continued making them. Pac-Mania, Pac-Man Arrangement, Pac-Man Chomp Mania, Pac-Man Battle Royale, World's Largest Pac-Man, and the craziest thing is, I'm probably forgetting some. That is how you milk an arcade franchise. Let's get into each game, or at least each game I was actually able to play, and see how it either improved upon or shit upon the original. Miss Pac-Man is the blueprint for how to make a video game sequel. With the introduction of multiple mazes, bonus fruit moving across the stage, and a new yet familiar protagonist, Miss Pac-Man just did everything right. However, I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about her, because this game truly deserves the time and effort for its own episode. Pac-Man Plus is like the Super Mario Bros. Lost Levels of Pac-Man. It essentially starts off where you would be in a later round of Pac-Man and incorporates some interesting changes that add to the challenge. Bonus items as well as power pellets change not only the ghosts, but can also make the ghosts invisible or black out the entire maze. Also, power pellets might not apply to every ghost, really ramping up the challenge. Can I also say, what are these bonus items? Are those peas or unsnapped green beans? Is that a sex on the beach? Can you imagine that? Pac-Man is just so fed up with chasing ghosts that all he wants is a nice drink that makes all the ghosts disappear. Until they come back and kill you anyway. The difficulty makes it hard to get into initially, but it is a relatively solid addition to the Pac-Man lineage. Then they try to do some weird shit where they mix the maze game with a pinball machine, and that's about all you need to know from Mr. and Miss Pac-Man as well as Baby Pac-Man. Super Pac-Man doesn't put you in the traditional maze that Pac-Man is used to. You have to eat all the fruit on stage, but they're blocked by doors. By eating keys, you can unlock the doors to get the fruit. There is the normal power pellet that lets you eat the ghost, but there's also a power pellet that makes you become huge. With this power, you can actually eat the doors and break through to get to the fruit without needing the keys. While the spin is a decent change of pace, the handling isn't as smooth as the original Pac-Man and isn't nearly as fun. Pac-and-Pal is similar to Super Pac-Man in that you have to unlock doors, this time by flipping cards, and eat all the fruit on screen. However, Pal is an absolute bastard and tries to steal the fruit when you unlock the doors. This makes you have to chase down Pal while you're trying to dodge the ghosts. The ghosts are easy to dodge with the power pellet though, as it will freeze the ghost in place. Compared to the original Pac-Man, this one's just kinda lame. Professor Pac-Man sucks. It's not even a maze game. It's a trivia game using the Pac-Man name to get people to play it. With each question, you have a set amount of time to answer with options A, B, or C. The quicker you answer correctly, the more points you get, but 3 wrong answers and it's game over. Also, if you get 5 answers correct, you get a bonus question. All in all, this should not be a Pac-Man game. The game was received so poorly that 300 of the 400 cabinets made were sent back to the manufacturing and converted to Pac-Land cabinets. Junior Pac-Man returns us to the maze game genre, and its main change to the formula is it makes the maze larger and gives you more mazes. Not much to say here. You do get to eat a tricycle as a bonus item though, so that automatically makes this game a 10 out of 10. To end our string of sequels within 2 years, we have Pac-Land. And it's not great. It shifts the focus from being a maze game to a side-scrolling platformer, and it just doesn't work. The game, for the most part, is just way too easy. There's no challenge in jumping over fire hydrants or dodging the ghosts. Until you get to this fucking spring-loaded diving board horse shit. I tried to make this jump several times and I couldn't do it. Maybe I'm just bad at the game, but I feel like the slipperiness of Pac-Man's momentum really doesn't help you get enough of a running start to actually make the jump. And I'm over here playing with a fucking controller! I can't imagine trying to play this game with arcade-style buttons. I think that I'd rather dive off a board and jump into a pool filled with cat urine than continue to play this game. But we talk a lot about the oversaturation of the Pac-Man market with all these sequels. We need to talk about the oversaturation of the entire video game market, and we can't speak about that without talking about the infamous video game crash of 1983. By 1983, the amount of games that were published was becoming increasingly overwhelming, while the quality of these games continuously plummeted. This led to many game companies shutting down, a drastic decrease in video game interest amongst the public, and what many people consider the end of the second generation of console gaming, as well as the golden age of arcade games. Many games were considered to be catalysts for the 1983 crash. Two of the main culprits were E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Pac-Man for the Atari 2600. This game is absolutely atrocious. I mean, just look at it. Listen to it. Everything on this screen is blending together color and shape-wise. The bonus items are just big blocks. There's almost no visual distinction between ghosts that can kill you and ghosts that can be eaten, and that sound when you eat a pellet. Just terrible. People may want to write this off as a 2600 being a primitive console, but it was capable of so much more than this. I'm not asking for a one-to-one recreation of the arcade game. I'm just asking for it to not sound like... It's just so clear that this game was heavily rushed and sold entirely on name value. There are no merits or redeeming qualities to this game. This might be in contendership for worst game of all time, and it's literally a port of one of the best games of all time. I'm not even mad anymore. This is just sad. You know what Pac-Man needs? A sequel. And I'm not talking about some cash grab on the name, or a change in the playable character, or something that barely changes the formula. I'm talking about an honest-to-God sequel. Pac-Man 2: The New Adventures? Now this is what I'm talking about. Maybe it won't be as good as the original, but it can't be worse than the 2600 port. I can't believe it. But this is so much worse. This is quite possibly the worst point-and-click game I've ever played. Pac-Man just does not listen. It's like playing a worse version of Hey You Pikachu. Not only does the game not play well, the game's boring. Why on a console like the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis would you ever pick a point-and-click game over Super Mario World or Sonic the Hedgehog? This could have at least been a mediocre platformer, but once again they decided to break from what made Pac-Man successful and put something out that has no bearing on what Pac-Man is supposed to be. At least you can shoot Pac-Man with a slingshot. That's gotta be worth something. Pac-Man would go on to have several home console or PC games, most of which being maze games or platformers. Let's take a look at the rest of Pac-Man's ventures into your living room. Here's Pac-in-Time. And when I said Pac-Man Plus was the Lost Levels equivalent for Pac-Man, Pac-in-Time is the American Super Mario Bros. 2 of the franchise. It's a reskin of a game called Fury of the Furries, and it plays like total ass. The goal of each level is to eat all the pellets while simultaneously using power-ups to proceed through to the end. You can swing on ropes, shoot fireballs, breathe underwater, and more, but no amount of power-ups will fix how slippery the controls are. Just like Pac-Land, Pac-Man's momentum is just all over the place, and that makes tricky jumps a total hassle. This might not be the worst Pac-Man game, it arguably isn't even one to begin with, but the point here is it definitely has been lost to time for good reason. Pac-Man would have many ventures into the world of platforming, and most were unsuccessful. However, there is a series of games that a lot of people enjoy and most have nostalgia for. Let's talk about the Pac-Man World games. Pac-Man World for the PS1 is a pretty alright 2.5D platformer. The story goes that a giant robot Pac-Man imposter has kidnapped Miss Pac-Man, and Pac-Man must travel to Ghost Island in order to rescue her. It honestly isn't bad, but compared to other games of this generational jump to 3D, it's a little lackluster. You do get to do a little butt bounce to get to high places or kill enemies, and he can do a little charged up rolling spin move, so it's nice to see Pac-Man diversify his moveset. Pac-Man World 2 improves upon the first Pac-Man World's mechanics, but it is still a generic 3D platformer. Even still, I enjoyed playing it. A couple of ghosts steal this golden fruit from a tree, releasing an ancient evil ghost that was imprisoned by Pac-Man's ancestors. The cutscene goes on for a bit, but nothing too Wait. Does that ghost want to fuck Pac-Man? I'm not sure if this makes this game better or worse. Either way, this definitely isn't a bad game. And now we move on to Pac-Man World 3. What can I say about it that I didn't already say about Pac-Man World 2?
Did someone say cake?
Pac-Man can actually talk? Well, that's hilarious.
Well, you only turned 25 once.
It just sounds so old.
Aw, sweetie, you're only as 25 as you feel.
What does he mean 25 is old? Anyway, Pac-Man now has combos to where he can fight multiple enemies at once. The butt bounce is like an AoE attack, for example. Overall, this trilogy of games is not a bad addition to the Pac-Man series. I wouldn't say it's a must-play, but you wouldn't be wasting your time giving it a shot. While there are many games that Pac-Man starred in, there are other forms of media like TV and movies that he appeared in.
That was some twisted Pinocchio Geppetto stuff right there.
Deliziosa, è come le gelatine scadute. Oh, che bella ciliegia.
Oh mio Dio, ha mangiato Fry! Fry è morto!
Tutto ok? Avevo un'altra vita?
Sì!
He knows what's about to happen to him.
Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures ran on TV from 2013 to 2015. It wasn't that good of a show, but just like any other mediocre television show or movie, it of course had to have its video game tie-in. 2, in fact. Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures 1 and 2 are 3D platformers, and once again, I have nothing super insightful to say about it. It's just not great. In fact, the games and the show were relative failures. Pac-Man doesn't seem to have much success when he's trying out other genres based off of what I've seen so far. So let's take a step back and look at some of the other maze games that Pac-Man has starred in. Some of the last couple of arcade titles I was able to get footage of were Pac-Mania, Pac-Man Arrangement, and Pac-Man Battle Royale. Let's take a look at each. Pac-Mania returns to the maze formula with an isometric angle and more ghosts. I think the biggest challenge that's brought about by this game is that you are intended to not see the whole screen at once, just what is currently around Pac-Man. Also, you can just straight up jump over the ghosts if you're in a bind. It's a pretty nice challenge and a pretty fun game. Pac-Man Arrangement introduces some different mechanics such as ghosts and the player being able to jump from one end of the maze to the other, as well as a speed boost that lets you zip past the ghosts. The arcade version is okay, but the PlayStation version really shines. Not only is it a more polished game, but it introduces boss battles into the mix. How's a boss battle supposed to work with Pac-Man, you ask? Well, the boss is a giant ghost that is trying to attack or catch Pac-Man. When you eat a power pellet, the giant ghost breaks into several smaller blue ghosts that Pac-Man can eat. If time runs out on the power pellet, the ghosts form back into the bigger ghost. But if you eat all the ghosts, then you've defeated the boss. So far, this is my favorite addition to the Pac-Man formula. Definitely a game worth your time. On top of all the single-player Pac-Man games that we've covered so far, there are also plenty that incorporate a versus mode as its main selling point. Pac-Man Battle Royale has you play against up to 3 more players, dodging ghosts, eating power pellets, and trying to devour each other. Basically, the last one to die is the winner. It's okay, just rudimentary, and as we'll see, that formula has been heavily improved upon. Pac-Man Versus is a great example of another way to approach this idea. Instead of having multiple Pac-Man in the maze against each other, you can have one player play as Pac-Man and the other players play as the ghosts. This makes the game very chaotic and fun. There's nothing quite like being right on Pac-Man's tail just for him to eat a power pellet, turning you from the hunter to the prey. Then you have games that do this totally wrong, like Pac-Man All-Stars for the PC. This game sucks. You play against other AI like Miss Pac-Man, Pac Jr., and Professor Pac-Man. Hold on. He made it into this?! Anyway, the goal is to get to a certain amount of points first. Also, the controls for this on a keyboard are not as responsive as you'd like them to be. It's just not good. Don't waste your time playing this one. Another PC game that isn't so bad is Pac-Man Adventures in Time. Ghosts have stolen a sacred power pellet and has been scattered across various parts of history. Pac-Man, with the help of fucking Professor Pac-Man, goes back in time and encounters different mazes he must clear in order to find the sacred power pellet's fragments. It plays like most every other maze game in Pac-Man's franchise, so it's pretty okay. Now it's time to focus on the Pac-Man games that completely broke the mold for what Pac-Man is known for. I really don't have high hopes here, but maybe we can find at least one gem. Pac Attack is a Tetris knockoff where you're trying to group together ghosts so that when you get a Pac-Man piece, he can eat them. It plays a lot like Tetris in the sense that there are blocks falling down from the top, and the farther you get, the faster the blocks show up. Pac-Man is also heavily affected by gravity in that when he can go down, he will go down, so you have to be very strategic in where you place the ghosts. I've gotta say, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty fun. Pac and Roll for the DS is just a shitty version of Super Monkey Ball. Controlling Pac-Man is a pain in the ass, and navigating tricky platforms or jumps with Pac-Man's weird rolling momentum is just a monumental task. What is it with Pac-Man they can't just give him momentum that you can feel and understand? Like, this is the third game they fucked that up on. You know, if Mario can do it, why can't Pac-Man? Pac-Motos is another one that shouldn't even be a Pac-Man game. All you do is knock other characters off of the platform, and it's really easy to do until you hit a significant difficulty spike on the boss. I just can't wrap my head around why Pac-Man is even attached to this game. It does not make sense. Pac-Man Fever and Pac-Man Party are basically the same game, as they are both cheap knockoffs of Mario Party. What else am I expected to say about them? Have you played Mario Party and not enjoyed it? Then you've played both of these games. The only big difference is in Pac-Man Party, you build castles on your spaces, so it's kind of like they tried incorporating Monopoly into the fray, but the board as well as the minigames are just boring. Well, my expectations are through the floor and entering hell as we speak. Might as well try Pac-Man World Rally for the GameCube. What's the worst that could happen? Even if this was the worst kart racer of all time, this soundtrack is incredible. Let's see how it plays. Okay, pretty standard, not bad on the handling. What? I can eat the other racers? Oh my god, between this and the soundtrack, this might be the best Pac-Man spin-off there is. Holy shit, this is so much fun. Pac-Man's also made appearances as a playable character in many games such as Street Fighter Cross Tekken for the PS3 and Super Smash Bros. 4 and Ultimate. There's something about Pac-Man being a fighting character that just works. But I still don't understand why his final boss in Smash Ultimate is Dracula. Maybe in between all those bonus fruits, Pac-Man ate some garlic or something and that pissed Dracula off. Who knows? Well, I think that just about covers it. I really wish there was a game we could end on that really encapsulates what the Pac-Man franchise should be. A game that, you know, interlocks the classic maze game style of the original Pac-Man and just marries it with modern mechanics. I guess that's just too much to ask for. Wait. I think there was one game on the Xbox Live Arcade at some point. Yeah. Pac-Man Championship Edition? Let's see how this plays. Here we go! Now this feels exactly what I've been asking for. There are different modes you can play through, but most of them are timed and have an increased emphasis on score. It's like playing an enhanced version of the original game. Also, Toru Iwatani, the original developer of Pac-Man, came back to handle this game's design. How awesome is that? They updated it a few years later, releasing Pac-Man Championship Edition DX, later changed to DX Plus, which added some much needed improvements to the game. One of the coolest things in this version is how time slows down when you're about to touch a ghost, giving yourself the opportunity to correct an otherwise fatal mistake. Also, being chased by several more ghosts than what you're used to amps up the tension, and also allows for a lot of satisfaction when you get that power pellet and literally eat dozens of ghosts all in one go. Let's see what else we got. Pac-Man 256? Well, the name has to be a reference to the kill screen, and oh wow. It's like you're playing on the kill screen. The maze continuously scrolls up, which keeps you moving, and the game only ends once you die. You can keep going forever if you're capable of that. Also, the ghost patterns and movements are shuffled up, which is a nice touch. This is definitely a great game to play while you're just hanging out and need something to be on the screen. I like this one a lot. For those of you who wish the Battle Royale or Versus aspect of Pac-Man would have been played out a little further, I have just the game for you. Free on the Switch with Nintendo Switch Online is one of my favorite Battle Royale style games, Pac-Man 99. This game is hectic, non-stop fun the moment you boot up a round. With 99 players battling it out, you have to survive until the very end while all other players fail. When you eat a ghost, you send out an obstacle to another player for them to deal with, but players can also send obstacles your way. These are mostly in the form of grayed out Pac-Man that slow you down if you touch them, or red Pac-Man that chase you like the ghost and kill you. If you get touched by anything that can kill you, you're eliminated. I've never won, but I can definitely recognize that this is a really cool game to play. Now, if you want to talk about my favorite Pac-Man game, then look no further than Pac-Man Championship Edition 2. There are two main modes to this game, Score Attack and Adventure. Score Attack focuses on getting the highest score you can, while Adventure has you complete certain goals with each area ending in a boss battle. The game is fast-paced, non-stop, hectic maze running, and honestly, this is probably the best testament to Pac-Man's legacy there is. I can only imagine that the feeling I get playing Championship Edition 2, where I'm simply mesmerized and only want to keep going, is a similar feeling to those arcade goers in 1980 meeting Pac-Man for the first time. I genuinely believe that this is the best game in Pac-Man's illustrious history, and I will be continuing to play it even after this lecture concludes. Well, there you have it. That's every major game that Pac-Man has starred in that I could get a hold of. It really speaks to Pac-Man's continued popularity that, throughout the ups and downs experienced in this franchise, he still remembered fondly, and in some degree, played today. You can play most of the games you've seen in this lecture on Pac-Man Museum Plus, available on all major consoles. Thanks for watching. Remember to catch me next time right here on VG 101.